So, after a week of sweltering in my sickbed, I've managed to haul myself in front of the camera to give you the next 10 in my top 100 games. Now, I know I look so lithe and healthy that I couldn't have possibly been ill, but believe me, it was rough back there. I mean, I almost fell asleep during episode 12 of my marathon rewatch of 24. It's brilliant, by the way. So now that I've given you far more information than you could have possibly wanted, I give you... There aren't many war games on my list, but the ones that are absolutely cracking. Martin Wallace is, without doubt, one of the best game designers to have ever graced the profession, and his reuse of deck building is masterful. The way the game simulates your ever-growing or decreasing influence is so clever. Your deck expands as you acquire territories and shrinks as you lose them, so the quantity of tools at your disposal lets you know how you're doing in real time. Also, it is a brilliantly balanced game, if you don't read the online strategy guides, with all of the thrust and parry that is so crucial in two-player wargames. Like the war games that I gravitate to, this is an entry-level one, but it's one of the tent poles of accessible wargame design, and there would be no Undaunted series without it. This isn't the only pandemic legacy game on this list, and although I think this series is without doubt the apotheosis of legacy games, they will never feature super high on the list. Well, because there's no way I'm pulling them back off the shelf to play them again. Bloody hell, this blows your socks off though. More NBC than HBO in its storytelling style, nevertheless it doles out this story brilliantly, using super innovative game mechanisms and gasp out loud twists. I was delighted when this was briefly #1 on BGG because I think for those entering the hobby, this highlights the beautifully dizzying heights that analogue games can reach. And those few, I assume there must be some, that bought this based upon its #1 rating, well, they must be cock-a-hoop. Even if you're one of those incurable curmudgeons that has no track with newfangled stuff like legacy games, you should try this one. It's ace. This was my #1 game, until I played it with someone who found a broken strategy and destroyed me. And because I'm an insufferable child, well, I haven't played it since. That's so unfair though, because this one is so good. I can't tell you the joy I experienced when I first played this one. For a person of such inferior cognition, to find a game I jived with so seamlessly was a revelation. And it's this game, as much as anyone, that strapped me firmly to this hobby. It just has so much: the multi-use cards, the effortlessly integrated worker placement, and the achingly slow but compellingly tense race are blended together so skillfully. I even bought the upgrade stickers back when upgrading a game cost a couple of quid, not the price of a small stately home in Kent. You know what? I'm so good at this bigging up a game lark, I've convinced myself to play this one this week. Creating media in the board game space has put me in contact with so many people that I admire. Wizards that are able to conjure joy out of intellectual concepts. None more so than the doyen of British game design, Tony Boydell. This game evokes its designer so brilliantly. On the surface it seems polite and parochially British. Underneath though, there are teeth. This is a devilishly tight game that bursts with combos that can kick your opponent squarely in the unmentionables, even when they think they've wrapped up the points. This is a game that should be far better regarded than it is, and it desperately needs a reprint. I've seen the work that Tony puts into his designs, and it's no wonder that they come out as good as this. Publishers, get on it. I have a problem with Alexander Pfister's designs. I find them unwieldy and overflowing with redundancy, or like a book that you love when reading, but when you put it down, you never pick it back up again because the thought of it just, I don't know, puts you off. Great games need to urge you to put them on the table, and Great Western Trail is one hell of an urger. This is a beautifully clean and mature design. The travelling feels like travelling, the delivering feels like delivering, and all of it is so deftly integrated. Yes, there are a few rules, but they're so plausibly integrated into the overall game that they just sink into your brain. This is another game I've only played once that has leapt into my top 100, and when I play it more, it's going to shoot up the ranks. The commands and colours system is genius. Play a card that moves your troops on one or two of the 3 regions of the board, then have a scrap. So simple, so elegant, so good. Battlelore takes this system and slathers on its bland generic fantasy IP and a really cool magic system that allows you to do the kind of crazy things you want to in a game like this. Then the special powers on the super duper units are completely OP, so they feel important when you deploy them. There are tons of scenarios and the game doesn't outstay its welcome. I adore medium weight games, and this one crash lands slap bang in the middle of medium weight and swaggers around shouting, "Look at me!" This is a swingy and unpredictable 2-player skirmish game, and I love it. Oh, do you remember those days when FFG was good before Asmodee gutted them? Me too. Great days. There is another, more swingy, more chaotic and altogether more fun Carl Chuddock game further up the list, but you can actually buy this one and it's great too. A deck of cards where each card has its own special power but can also transform itself into a craftsperson, an art dealer or a simple resource is just so bloody clever. I mean, kneel at the foot of the master clever. Carl Chuddock is a singular mind, and the wonder he can coax out of a simple deck of cards is one of the miracles of the modern world. This is a reworking of the game he's most famous for, but it's a fantastic game in and of itself. It's a proper, profound gaming experience in 20 minutes. That is a bloody achievement. Clever blending of 18xx and worker placement, this is a game that should be talked about a whole lot more. This is a game that speaks to an ethos and a message through the unique way that games can. Mechanically. I was a teacher for a long time, and it was clear to me that my boss would have been a whole lot happier if he could have delivered the education without those bloody teachers that he had to pay and mar his monthly sales report. This is the story that City of the Big Shoulders tells. That industrial capitalism seeks technological innovation to strip human labour and, as a result, human dignity from the profit stream. Games can tell this kind of story in such a stark and impactful way. Every time you bring in a mechanical innovation and throw another worker on society's trash heap, you become more efficient and, most importantly, more profitable. There is no doubt that the harnessing of human self-interest can raise the tide for all ships, but there is also no doubt that those who profit hugely from the system have an obligation to the place that has showered them with such wealth. This is what City of the Big Shoulders is saying in a brilliant 3-hour experience. And if you haven't got 3 hours, I can boil it down for you to a simple, pithy phrase. Fuck Ayn Rand. Bloody Reiner Knizia. He can take a single action and create a whole ludological world out of it. Blue Lagoon is just brilliant. All you do on your turn is place a piece, and from that 1,000 ramifications bloom. Then the game goes into its second phase, where you place pieces and 1,000 different ramifications bloom. The rules are so simple and the gameplay is so deep. The more I play Knizia's games, the more I'm sure that he is the best mind in board gaming. A true genius. Bloody Reiner Knizia, I'm not a huge solo game player, but this one is brilliant. It couldn't be anything other than a solo game, really. But the way it portrays those wonderful, schlocky slasher movies of the 80s that I watched when I was altogether too young is evident of a real respect and affection on the part of the designers for the genre. This is a real tour de force in theme. Solo games need to be a simple task to get to the table for me, to be bothered with them. There is one exception on this list, but there's a very good reason for that being here. And Final Girl takes 2 minutes to set up, and then you're right in the action. Everything about this game works, and nothing is extraneous. Even the magnetic box lids add to its playability. I would be so proud if I could produce something half as good as this. Be warned though, there is a shitload of dice rolling, but the real challenge of the game is managing the amount of dice that you're allowed to roll, to make sure that you can stay ahead of the evil that stalks you. Even if the thought of playing with yourself doesn't appeal, try Final Girl. It rules. Well, there we are, another 10. Thanks so much for watching and commenting on the last vid. Also, I've heard you can sub and hit me on the bell, and if you want to be like one of these special people, you can also back my Patreon. It truly helps me to produce this stuff. Right, now after a week in bed, I'm going for a pint.